Last class, we talked about limits from graphs and from tables. We talked about how the GPS basically needs to take you to the same place for there to be a limit on the left side and the right side. That was the definition of a limit. Today, we're going to be looking more algebraically, so I'm not going to be giving you any graphs. I'm going to be giving you equations to do limits with. So there's a few properties, scenarios that we need to be cognizant of. Is that my phone ringing? Yeah. Can you answer it, please? The 5 properties of limits that we're going to go over in class are as follows. So we're going to call this section the properties of limits. To do these properties, we do need to have a few givens for us. We're going to let the limit as x approaches c for f of x be this large number L, and we're going to let the limit as x approaches c for a function g of x be the number k. So we're pretending we have 2 limits. They both have a limit. One of them is to the limit L, and one of them is to the number k. The first property is called the scalar multiple. Is that lunch? No, that's not lunch. I just got so excited for lunch. In the scalar multiple, we're saying that the limit as x approaches c for some number being multiplied in front of f of x is the same as when we take that number and we multiply it by the limit. So if you had a polynomial that had a number multiplied in front of it, you could basically take that number, put it to the side for a second, do the limit, and then multiply it by that scalar. So it's a scalar multiple property. The second property is called the sum or difference property. The sum or difference property says that if we're doing the limit as x approaches c for some composite or some combination of f and g with addition and subtraction, then we could do their limits basically separately and then just add or subtract their limits together. So if we have 2 functions and we're adding them together and taking a limit, we can take each limit separately and add the limits at the end. The third of 5 properties is the product property of limits. It's saying that if we're doing the limit as x approaches c for multiplying f of x times g of x, that it follows that we can just multiply their limits together themselves. Number 4, the fourth one is a quotient. If the limit as x approaches c for the ratio of f to g, so we're dividing them, kind of follows, as you've probably seen, we can do L over K. However, this one has a bit of a caveat. K cannot equal 0. Now, we'll just take a second to decide, why can k not be equal to 0? Are you allowed to divide by 0? No, which is a problem. Here's kind of the 3 scenarios you can end up with. If you have 0 divided by some number, so if I have 0 divided by a number, you're on track. That's 0. If you have a number divided by 0, that's a no-no. That's undefined. Further, and you've probably never seen this one before, if you have 0 divided by 0, that's called an indeterminate form. And as of right now, we do not have enough skills to be able to answer this question. So we'd have to be doing something different with our limit if we end up with 0 over 0. Because it's not 0, it's not undefined, it's literally undetermined. An indeterminate form. So if you end up with zeros in the denominator, take a pause. A number in the top would be undefined. A 0 in the top would be indeterminate. The last property of limits that we're going to discuss today is called the power property. It says the limit as x approaches c for f of x raised to some power n can be found to be the limit also raised to that power n. So basically, arithmetic works with limits just like it works with functions. So if we had a function plus a function, the limits would be the two limits added together. Function times a function, multiply the limits. Function divided by another function, do the quotient, as long as the bottom's not 0. Same, okay? So what we're going to be doing with these properties when we get to problems is we're going to have to figure out how to tell a limit when we don't have a graph, and we're going to use a lot of these properties to do so. We're going to jump right into an example. Example 1. We're going to find the limit as x approaches 2 for the polynomial 4x squared plus 3. Now, we weren't given a graph. Some of us could probably think about what this looks like. It's a quadratic that has been stretched by a factor of 4 and then scooted up 3 units. So we kind of know what we're looking at. But if we didn't have an idea of the graph, and we don't need an idea of the graph, how can we use these properties to find the actual limit? Okay, first things first, we're going to use property number 2 to do the following. We're going to say, all right, property 2 said that I can separate and do the limits of each part separately. So I'm going to do the limit of the 4x squared plus the limit of 3. That's property number 1. Sorry, property number 2. Hello. Speaking of property 1, though, I can use property 1 in the first limit statement to rearrange this so that the vertical stretch of 4, that's a scalar multiple, is written before the limit itself. At this point, we're going to use what's called direct substitution to find the limit. We know that this function right here is a what kind of function again? Quadratic. Quadratics, are they continuous functions? Like, you don't have to pick your pencil up once you start drawing that parabola. You can connect all of the points together. So we know there's not going to be any broken pieces like last time when our GPS didn't take us to the same spot. So we can just use direct substitution to find this limit. And direct substitution is exactly what it sounds like. You are literally just going to substitute that number in. If I was trying to directly substitute x approaching 2, or 2, into the second part, is there any place for me to put a 2 in this little part? No, so it just gets to be a 3. 2 squared is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 plus 3 is 19. The limit as x approaches 2 for the polynomial 4x squared plus 3 is 19. Again, we used direct substitution to do this. We're allowed to do that with all of the properties that we got above. We're able to basically break it down to very, very basic level continuous polynomial functions, for the most part today, and be able to do these types of limits. Now, when we're doing a problem later, I'm not going to make you write down what property you're using to do this. This is just a very fundamental starting place. If we were wanting to do a couple more examples here, the way that I would maybe have you do an example on the whiteboard or on your notes, it would look something like this. So let's do another example. We're going to find first the limit as x approaches 1 for the rational function x squared plus x plus 2, all divided by x plus 1. We had some properties that told us if we're doing the limit of a ratio, of a quotient, we can do the limit separately. Within those, there's pluses and minuses. So we can basically distribute that, I said distribute, it's not really distribution, but you get what I mean, that limit to each part, which then allows me to do direct substitution immediately. If we went ahead and did direct substitution here, this would be a 1 squared plus 1 plus 2, all divided by 1 plus 1. Well, what's 1 squared?
1.
Plus 1 plus 2. 4, and then 1 plus 1 in the denominator. So our limit as x approaches 1 for that rational function is 2. Just by being able to directly substitute it. And that comes from all of those properties that we wrote down. Let's try a second example. It's going to be very similar. What if we did the limit as x approaches 1 for x squared minus 2x plus 1 over x minus 1? Again, it's a rational function. My rules tell me I can split it to top and bottom, and then I can split it again at the pluses and minuses, so I can really just directly substitute immediately. This is going to be 1 squared minus 2, I should have put that in parentheses, 1 squared minus 2 times 1 plus 1 over 1 minus 1. One squared is 1, 2 times 1 is 2, so I have 1 minus 2 plus 1. What's happening on the top? 0. What's happening on the bottom? 0. Uh-oh. We just talked about this. This is called an indeterminate form. You can't stop here. This does not answer the question. We don't know what the limit is yet. I got 0 over 0. So what we have to do when direct substitution doesn't work, this might be something I would write down for myself. When direct substitution doesn't work, try factoring. When direct substitution doesn't work, meaning you get 0 over 0, try factoring. Which, means we have to memorize or remember all of our factoring rules. If we factored that numerator, I'm looking for numbers that will multiply to make the last number c. What numbers multiply to make 1? 1 and 1. Is there a way I can add the numbers 1 and 1 and get negative 2? What happens if they're both negative? Negative 1 plus negative 1, isn't that negative 2? So we just did the guess and check method for factoring. If you're like, I don't know what that means, but I'm really good at X puzzles, Miss Quigley, cool. That's what I did. I just did it in my head. What do you notice now is on top and bottom? There's a same thing on top and bottom. X minus 1 and x minus 1 are going to cancel each other out. This is why we factor, because now when we do the direct substitution, all we're doing the direct substitution with is x minus 1. And even though we couldn't answer this question when it was in fully factored form, if we factored out that hole in the graph, we were able to see that the limit as we get close to the number 1 would be 0. It's a hole in this graph because it had the same factor top and bottom, so we couldn't tell from direct substitution what was happening, but our GPS is still taking us almost there. So we still have a limit at 0. So here's maybe a list of things to try when we are evaluating limits analytically. We're going to call this section Analytical Strategies for Finding Limits. The first thing you should really always try is that direct substitution. And direct substitution will work unless you get 0 over 0, in which case you're going to need to try something else. Once direct substitution doesn't work, we just saw an example of this where we could try to factor and cancel. And once you factor and cancel, you go back to direct substitution. It should work. If that doesn't work or you can't factor the polynomial or rational function that you were given, something else you can try is trying to rationalize the numerator or denominator. And when I'm telling you to rationalize the numerator or denominator, I am telling you to multiply by the conjugate. And if you're like, those are words I've heard before, but it's been a long time. Let's say your equation says this. Oh, nope. What you would do is you would multiply the top and bottom by the conjugate of the rational term. That pink thing, it looks exactly like the numerator except what? Opposite what? Opposite operation. So that's something we could potentially try, is rationalizing, trying to get a different equivalent form of the expression so that we could then go back and direct substitute. Always going back and direct substituting. And then number 4 is to use special trig limits. I think I misspelled that word. Or identities. In a previous class to this, I hope that you learned some of your trig identities, right? Cosine, sine, your Pythagorean identities, those things like that. That could come in handy here, or different various ways to represent them. But when I'm talking specifically about special trig limits, there are 2 that you kind of need to memorize. The limit as x approaches 0 for sine of x over x is equal to 1. That's like a rule, a law, we need to know it. The limit as x approaches 0 for sine of x over x is 1. The other one that we need to memorize is the limit as x approaches 0 of 1 minus cosine of x over x, and that's equal to 0. There's a proof for these in the textbook. There's a proof for these using the squeeze theorem, but we don't really need that. We can just use these. If you see this, you know that that part is equal to 1. If you see this, you know that that part is equal to 0. You can also start, if you know the shape of the graph, you can think about the graph since we're all pretty strong in that aspect. Our last little caveat to ourselves is if you get a number over 0, which we know is undefined, or you get either positive or negative infinity as the answer to your direct substitution, however it took you to get there. If you had to factor then direct substitute, either way, if you get these, then the limit does not exist.